This week, if you're watching it at or at least around release, is going to be a week of modding on the channel. Think of it as almost similar to Shark Week, except when it comes to mods for Fallout, Skyrim, and even some other games that may surprise you. So if you want to stay tuned for the rest of this, I do recommend you do subscribe, but otherwise, what we're looking at today are the top 5 Fallout 4 mods of 2019. Now you might be questioning, hey, 2019's not over yet. Yeah, I know. Consider this a work in progress list. It is subject to change, although at least some of these pretty much have mainstays on this list. I would say there's low to no chance that they actually get one-upped by something else before the end of the year, but either way, I'm going to be looking at all of the mods to come out from January 1st, 2019 until today, July 22nd, 2019, and a few of these are surprisingly new releases. It has certainly been a great year for Fallout 4 modding, and as it pertains to the list itself, this easily could have been a top 10 or even a top 15 video, but I think in actually doing just the top 5 mods, it allows me to really narrow down and focus on some of those truly great and innovative mods to come out, which you'll obviously notice as a common theme throughout this video. Also, it's in no particular order, except for the number 1 mod is always, in my eyes at least, the best mod of the year. But either way, starting things off, let's take a look at what I view as the single best standalone weapon mod from 2019, and that's with the Mark 41 Gyro Jet heavy machine gun. We had a lot of standalone weapon mods this year, and I think there's really 2 things about this one in particular that made it stand out. Firstly, the weapon itself and simply how unique it is, but even further, the implementation of that weapon in Fallout 4. So looking at the Gyro Jet, it might look fairly similar to some other HMGs out there, but this has one big difference: what it shoots. The Mark 41 Gyro Jet is going to shoot .51 Gyro Jet rounds, which look like this. They are effectively little missiles, but they also really make the gameplay with this weapon quite distinctive. After impacting these rounds, we'll have a little explosion and they deal massive amounts of damage. Also, their damage increases the farther away the target is, so the longer they spend in the air, the more velocity they'll build up and the more damage they'll eventually do. But also, over particularly long distances, you'll have to account for bullet drop with this weapon. And also, if all that wasn't enough, it's not like you just get this one variant of that round. There are several other modifications you could make, so you could effectively be firing off little mini nukes from this weapon if you wanted to. It of course also has several of the staples of other weapon mods out there. Some really cool and unique weapon modification options, one homing option so you could lock onto an enemy and then all of your bullets will immediately trace to him. And honestly, if we stopped right there, this would still be one of the coolest weapon mods we saw this year, but fortunately, that brings us to the other side that makes this particularly special, that with its implementation into Fallout 4. You see, the Mark 41 Gyro Jet is described as a prototype weapon developed before the war, and the way it's introduced in-game is meant to mimic that. You can only find one variant of this in a military base somewhere in the Commonwealth. I don't want to spoil it in case you just want to naturally find it. In there, you'll find one iteration of the weapon, as well as crates of some of the various ammo types, but after you find all of that, that's it. Since this was a prototype and literally a one-of-one run, you're not going to be able to find these at vendors or anything like that. To get future ammo, you'll have to craft it yourself, which makes this feel like a very lore-friendly and special unique weapon in the game, and definitely one worth downloading. But unfortunately, with it being a unique weapon, it won't drop from legendary enemies, you won't be able to get legendary mods for it, but that was actually also accounted for. Now, when exploring the Commonwealth, you may stumble upon a military shipment that contained experimental mods basically mimicking legendary effects that you can now attach to the Gyro Jet. Several of these have pretty profound and interesting effects, definitely making the gun a lot more fun, especially towards the latter game. And then finally, if all of that somehow still wasn't enough, there's actually little sticker packs you could find also scattered throughout the Commonwealth, particularly at Red Rocket gas stations. Upon opening these, you'll get a random sticker. Some of them are more common, some of them are more rare, and that is based off of your luck stat. And this will be a new option you could attach to the weapon itself or actually place down in settlement mode. So taking it all together, this is really a complete package. The weapon itself is awesome, but I feel like the implementation is really what takes it to the next level. It is without a doubt one of the most enjoyable and satisfying weapon mods I've used thus far in Fallout 4, and I think just about everyone should have it in their game. But of course, if we have a weapon mod, we're also gonna have to have an armor mod, and for that we do have the Cross Chosen of Adam, which was, for me at least, by far the coolest and most enjoyable armor mod to come out in 2019 thus far. Nero, the mod author behind this one, has been on an incredible run with his mods for Fallout 4 over the past year or so. Almost anything he's posted could be in one of these videos, but this one stood out to me for several reasons. First and foremost, the armor itself. I think it's a great looking armor. There's several customization options, pretty similar to what you'll see with a lot of other armor mods out there. I think a lot of these look really cool, identifying with some of the major factions in the game, but also it is a highly modular armor, and it's actually one of those ones that I think you could use in a modular way. If you just want to use the mask, the helmet, or some of the armor pieces, I think that would look fine. It's definitely not one you have to use all together, or that you can't use pieced out. But one of the first new features with this one that I particularly love is actually something known as the master skin. Sometimes when trying out different textures or skins on armor mods, it gets kind of tiresome. There might be 6-7 different pieces and you have to apply the skin to each and every one. Well, the master skin's going to avoid that. When you have this enabled, just setting the skin on the base outfit will apply that same skin to all of the pieces in your inventory. But even further, one of my favorite parts about this mod is, as the name suggests, it actually is built around the children of Adam, and it actually implements a totally new NPC to that faction, that with the chosen of Adam. You'll find these guys intermixed with some of the other children of Adam. You also might just find this armor on other children of Adam, and they're definitely a tougher foe. It's a powerful armor that can be pretty versatile with some of the different texture options or however you customize it yourself. And I would say for me at least, the major reason this mod stood out from some of the rest was first because of its implementation into the game with adding in a new NPC and affecting that entire faction. You don't even have to use the armor yourself. It'll make the Children of Adam more interesting just by downloading it. But also, I feel like when you actually do customize this one, it could be used as several different things. A lot of armor mods that are faction driven like this one typically only look good with that singular customization option, but not this one. A lot of the other faction skins give it a distinctively different feel that I think makes it very relevant to all kinds of use cases. Both those mods are great, there's definitely no denying that, but they're just things. Something you can or cannot use on your character or some of the other NPCs in the game. But one mod that's not just a thing that's going to affect the game overall is Fallout 2287 Nuclear Winter. This to me is one of the most profound mods to come out of this year, simply due to the impact it has on Fallout 4 overall from just a couple of changes. Several of you may remember this mod as I did talk about it in a video from not too long ago. I will have that linked in the eye if you want to see it. It's actually a great mod list in and of itself. What Nuclear Winter is going to do in Fallout 4 is make it so you have to battle against the cold. The conditions will affect you, it'll affect your food, it'll make you care differently about heat sources around you or what armors you are wearing, and as you'll recognize with a common theme throughout this video, this is another one of those mods that part of the reason it makes it onto this list is simply how well implemented it is into the game, not just the new features it adds in. So at its core, what this mod's going to do is make it so the weather and temperature actually plays a role. You'll now have to worry about keeping your character warm, and if you don't, there will be downsides. Although if you do keep your character warm for long periods of time, there will be upsides. If it's raining or let's say really windy from a certain weather, it's going to make it so your character gets colder. Depending on how low your body temperature gets, it'll have a myriad of debuffs to your character that can actually have a pretty big impact, such as affecting accuracy, affecting your vision. But this mod will affect other things, like if you're playing on survival mode, your food and water can freeze if you don't keep it warm long enough. So then you could be battling against the elements and also starving to death in the process. But naturally, like any mod like this, there are ways to combat that. There are new items added in with this that will warm your character, protect you in other ways. This also will add in several new outfits and an insulation system overall. So depending on what type of clothing you are wearing, it'll now keep your body warm to a certain degree. And one of the cool parts about this is you could actually set this value for any armor you download. So in turn, it is compatible with literally any armor mod out there right now. But even further, there is just the simple standing next to a fire to keep yourself warm and get rid of some of those downsides from the elements. And that's really one of the main reasons I like this mod for Fallout 4 and why it's one of my favorites from this year. It adds in a whole new factor in the game that with temperature, the weather now has a real impact on how you play and what you can do during some of those windy snowstorms. There are very few mods that actually incorporate something like that so fundamental to the game that affects gameplay so widely. If you haven't done a hardcore survival playthrough with this mod installed, I'd say you're definitely missing out. It's without a doubt one of the cooler ones out there. So then actually before we get into two of the final mods on this list, I do want to shout out a couple of honorable mentions that just really stood out to me as being special. The first of which is going to be the LString Fallout Bow. This is just another weapon mod, but it's a bow and arrow in Fallout. It's not implemented in the best way, and I don't think it's necessarily better than some of the other mods on this list, but at the same time, it's so cool and novel and just simply fun to use in game that I think you'd be missing out if you didn't give it a try at least once. Plus, it actually pairs really well with the Nuclear Winter mod I mentioned earlier. Then we also do have Wasteland Tactical. What this is going to be is a new kind of backpack or weapon add-on mod, giving you the ability to have weapons on your character and weapons on your backpacks. It is a fairly simple mod, but it's also a really cool looking mod. I actually say some of these backpacks with the weapon add-ons go really well with the variety of different existing armor mods, and honestly, just keeping it simple, I think it looks cool and definitely one of the coolest looking backpack mods out there right now. But then going back to the main list of mods in this top 5, we also do have the Misriah Armory. I think to almost anyone, this is an easy choice for a video like this, or an easy choice to put in a top 5 of the year, just for the sheer scale and how much content this is adding into Fallout 4. This mod will add in 8 fully customizable and feature-rich weapons into Fallout 4, naturally all of them being from the Halo series of games. We've had several weapon packs in the past, but this is the most unique in that every single weapon in this pack could have been a standalone mod, and it would have been a great standalone mod. But with this weapon pack, you're getting all 8 of them in one complete package. It'll add in new pistols, SMGs, shotguns, sniper rifles, but it comes with all those other extra features also. Totally custom crafting tables to go along with it and actually get some of the items from this. Unique customization options that aren't just receiver changes, being able to actually change the damage type, turn SMG into a laser, adding unique scopes and barrel attachments. And of course, what I would say is one of the coolest aspects of this, working ammo counters on some of these weapons. It's almost a hard mod to talk about because of how much content it adds in. Again, I could go really in depth with any of these individual weapons, but to me at least, the main appeal of this one is how much content you're getting for free just from this one download. It's not lore friendly, but honestly, after using some of these weapons, I don't think you'll really care. But then that brings us to our final mod on this list, and it's probably not going to be a surprise to any of you. As I mentioned at the start of this video, this is, in my eyes, the single best mod of 2019, at least thus far, but probably for the entire year, and that is going to be the expansion to Sim Settlements with Conqueror. This mod is massive, and it does so many different things that it's almost hard to keep up with. So much so that I'm sure at least some of you watching this might have played this or used this mod at some point, and don't actually know about all the extra or newer features it's gotten. So at its core, one of the coolest features of this, and it's literally one of those features I've been requesting for years, like I made a video a couple years ago requesting this very feature. It'll make it so some of the settlements in Fallout 4 will now act as fully living, breathing towns, with settlers, shops you could purchase from, guards that you could explore. These will act on their own, they will grow on their own if you let time pass in game. Just do a natural playthrough and you might stumble upon a very built up town somewhere. This feature alone is one of the biggest. With no interaction from the player, it makes Fallout 4 feel like a much more living world, not nearly as desolate as it is to begin with. But that's just one side of it. It also does have the whole Sim Settlement Plus side of it, taking some of those core mechanics of Sim Settlements where you start and build up your own living settlements, but adding in to do all that and then go out and conquer other settlements. This is a blast, and especially since the initial release of this mod, this aspect of the mod has gotten a lot of additional features. So effectively, the way this is going to work is now you'll be able to convert certain settlements into military outposts, which is distinctive because if you're operating as a military outpost, you'll have additional features separate from that of a typical settlement, as a military outpost will function a lot more similarly to how you imagine a military base functioning. You'll be able to place down certain buildings that'll help your soldiers' morale or even equipment types. And from this, what you're really going to be doing is controlling a faction. You'll have the ability to raid, loot, or enslave other towns that are pre-spawned around the map. During these raids, you'll have to select which troops you're going to bring with you, and they're going to have different levels. They'll rank up from this experience, but if you lose one, that's it. You're going to have to wait as you try and recruit more. But also, you're living in a reactive world. By doing this, you might piss off other factions who will in turn come back and attack you. Sim Settlements Conqueror gives you the functionality to actually kind of build up your own empire in Sim Settlements. You'll be able to control several towns, running patrols through them, and you'll have to defend them, as others will try and fight back and take them from you, and sometimes they'll be successful. It's one of those systems that isn't just kind of haphazardly put into the game. There's so many features, components, and interesting things to do with this that it honestly sometimes feels like you're playing a totally separate game, not just a mod for Fallout 4. And yet, that's actually not it. Although that's probably one of the most famous famous and notable aspects of this mod, one of the other parts that has been getting continuous updates is the quest line. As when you start out with Sim Settlements Conqueror, you're now going to have the option to become a raider from the start, rather than helping the Minutemen. In fact, one of the first quests allows you to take down Preston Garvey permanently and have a totally different experience in Fallout 4. The introduction and fleshing out of this raider quest line through continuous updates gives you, one, just something to do. It's an interesting quest with an interesting story nonetheless, but also it finally gives you the option to have a true evil playthrough in Fallout 4, something that before this mod really wasn't there. This separate raider quest line is fully voiced and just feels professional. It feels like something Bethesda made themselves, and all of this ties back in with the faction you are building. It makes it so by completing some of these quests, as interesting as they are in themselves, you get tangible rewards for improving your settlement and actually taking down other towns. And even outside of all of that, this is one of the most moddable mods out there, which is kind of a weird concept, but yeah, you could go on Nexus or Bethesda.net and find a plethora of add-ons for this. Maybe you don't want to run a faction as a raider. Instead, you could do it as a gunner, as the Institute, as the Triggermen. There are options for pretty much every major faction out there, and it'll totally transform the look and feel of the settlements you control and start to take over, as well as affect what kind of troops you actually control and work with. This mod is a complete experience overhaul for Fallout 4, and if you haven't tried it, I think you're missing out on what is probably one of the best mods for Fallout 4. Even if you've already played Sim Settlements, the Conqueror expansion really takes it to another level. It adds in a ton of new features and functionality that you really don't want to miss out on. And even further, as I mentioned before, this is one of those mods that's continuously getting new updates and new mods by other mod authors. Check back every couple of weeks and there'll be some kind of new content for you to try out. So all in all, Sim Settlements Conqueror is basically a fully fledged expansion to Fallout 4, and arguably actually quite a bit larger than some of the existing expansions for this game. It is in my eyes the best mod of 2019, and put simply, probably one of the best mods for Fallout 4 period. Unfortunately, with Fallout 4 nowadays, there are very few mods that actually give you something new to do, but this one gives you a lot of new stuff to do. It allows you to experience the same game in a very different way, and one of the best parts is you could use pretty much all of those other mods I just talked about in this video with a new playthrough focusing just on playing Sim Settlements Conqueror. But overall, that is what, in my eyes, are the top 5 mods for Fallout 4 to come out in the 6 or 7 months of 2019 thus far. There's a lot of really great content here. I've heard some people saying that the Fallout 4 modding scene is dying, but I think this video is proof to the contrary. We are still, this year, getting some of the best mods we've seen thus far, and there's still a lot in store for the rest of the year. A lot of work in progress mods I've seen and talked about in other videos that you should be excited for and are not too far away. And again, if you guys did like this one or you want to see more modding content, as I mentioned, this is really going to be a week of mods on this channel. There's a lot of other mod-focused videos coming and things you should be looking forward to. So with that, if you did enjoy, you can leave a like or subscribe, but otherwise, I'll see you guys tomorrow with something else mod-focused.